yeah, I think now it's time. Maybe we can get started if you guys are all ready. So yeah, how are you guys doing today? Busy? Good. So yeah, today I'm here to talk about, right, like, comparing CMS ecosystems, right, like, what are the top CMSs are available, right, like utilized by the organizations, right. So just, yeah, I'm curious to know, right, have you guys, anyone worked on, like, the CMS systems, and, especially, like, what are your experiences with CMS systems? Anyone can share, like,
I've met nice people in all of the communities except AEM. I don't know anything about, but
maybe I'm the guy for you. So yeah, I did a lot of work in the AEM. So yeah. So yeah,
I'm a WordPress developer.
That's nice. Cool, cool.
WordPress, Craft, Expression Engine.
That's nice. Cool. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, right, while I'm preparing these sessions, right, so I was thinking, hey, hi, yeah, you can join. Yeah, so I was thinking about that when we say, like, content management system, right? So I was thinking that, hey, how organizations will decide, right, what kind of content management system they choose, right? What basis they choose, and if any new developer, right, if they want to learn new technology, right, or new CMS, right, how they decide for themselves, right? Like, I mean, like, what languages they have to know, right? What are the core technological framework of it, right? So yeah, I mean, I really don't want to go like depth of it, like, what architecture stack it builds on, like, everything. But I just want to give, like, brief overview of it, right? Like, I mean, how each of the systems, like, I mean, being developed, how these are leveraged. So yeah, I mean, without any further delay, like, let's jump in. So now, first I'll explain you, right, what exactly the CMS is, right? So I think most of you guys might already aware of it, but I just want to give, like, like little description of it, right? So the CMS and, like, the content management system is basically, like, software that allows, like, people to like, edit, manage, and publish and update digital content, like, without requiring, like, deep programmatical knowledge, right? So what it means is that, like, if you are owning a business, right, or if you are owning an enterprise, right, so you don't have to have, like, technical people around you. So by leveraging these systems, we can build, like, kind of forms or like components and templates, right? So they can come in and, like, they can update the content at any point of time in the real time. So that's the so that's the basically broader term of, like, content management system. So now in today's sessions, right, I'll talk about, like, these 4 major content management systems like Drupal, WordPress, Craft, and Adobe Experience Manager.
is AEM also a PHP based?
No, it's a Java and OSG.
So it's the standout from all those other ones.
Oh yeah,
PHP
oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'll discuss about that too. Yeah. You guys asked, right? Hey, why we need to have this conversation, right? Why, what's exactly the necessity of it? So, I always think, right, like, choosing the right CMS, it's not just the platform decisions, right? Like, hey, architecturally, like, organization level, we need to choose, like, Drupal or, like, WordPress or Craft or Adobe Experience Manager, right? It is a kind of strategic commitment, right? I know that affects basically, like, development velocity and, right, the governance maturity, right? How we can scale it in the future, and what's the total cost of ownership of it. So we need to consider, all these areas, right? So a well chosen CMS can streamline the content operations, right? Like, content authors will have feasibility to like, update content in, in a like streamlined way, right? And it reduces like, so much of operational and maintenance overhead in the future. And yeah, so hey, on the other hand, right, what happens, right, if you choose like, wrong CMS, right? So eventually, right, so once, you might feel comfortable to pick up one CMS, right? Like say, hey, WordPress is something so easy to use, right? We don't need like, so much of learning curve. If you choose that, right, later on the phases, right, you will encounter like bottlenecks and like, the security risk and like, overall you will have the long-term, technical debt. So yeah, I mean, organizations, right, like basically, they'll ignore like ripple effects of, choosing the wrong CMS. So, it basically affects the workflows efficiency and like, the design system flexibility and like, overall, customer, experience, right? So you will have inconsistent content across the board. So when you are dealing with like, multi-channel content, right? Like if you have, systems that are like, like omni-channel and like, the app and mobile, tab and desktop, right? So the CMS can give you like, consistent experience across all the touch points. So that's the key here. So that's why, beginning itself, we need to do little research, right? Hey, what are our organizational goals, right? So what are our like, technical skill sets are available, right? So how much budget we have, right? How much security and scalability we are looking for. Are we planning to expand it in like, global level? So are we ready for like having like multi-language site, right? So we need to think about all these perspectives like before deciding like, which CMS can fit for one organization. So yeah, so.
One thing that I've known for a long time, starting in Drupal back in like 4.4, that kind of thing, like every release could require you to do an enormous amount of work. And of course 7 to 8 was even off the chart beyond all those.
Right.
But even the ones before that, like 5 to 6 or 6 to 7, it was impossible. Like you couldn't do it. Like if you maintained 10 sites or 20 sites, you could not do it. But when you just got into Drupal, you didn't know that was ahead of you. That you had years of impossible maintenance to do to catch up with those.
You will have a lot of backlog in place, right? You cannot rebuild whole platform, right? It can create a lot of bottlenecks. I mean, personally, right? I had experience in my past project, right, when we were using the Adobe Experience Manager for managing the just assets, like for one of our retail client, right? We were storing like millions of assets into the system, right? They told us, hey, you can use the dynamic media as a plugin, right? So we chose that one, and we have like kind of downstream systems and upstream systems, everything integrated so well together. But when we want to add one more layer to it, right? When we want to enhance it, they said, hey, this feature is not supported by us, right? So then we cannot switch it and we cannot migrate it, right? So it's a very chaos, right? So that's the reason why it's better to invest our time to choose what exactly we are trying to achieve and like what exactly features it allows us and how it can fit for our organizational goals. So that's the key here.
And how maintenance is going to work in the future years.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And who's going to pay for it?
Oh yeah. True.
Drupal devs are expensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, like at that point, like you're kind of like asking for a unknown, right?
Right.
So nobody knew that like when we were back in the day when we were on like Drupal 7,
right.
That 8. Well, okay, we don't talk about 8. like Drupal 8 was like the Windows millennium of like but upgrading from 7 and like beyond, no one knew at the time how much of a pain that was going to be, because there was such a fundamental shift in the technology. I mean, even like going back to like when I'm about as old as you in Drupal years, going from like 4.4 to 4.5, 4.5 to 6, 6 to 7. and that's just within the 4 dot range. Like that wasn't that terrible, but then we started seeing these like much larger shifts in how we do things, right? And then how to think in terms of Drupal.
Right.
So looking for figuring out those future costs, that's an exercise of utility, because you're never going to know what crazy idea Teresa's going to come up with next, and how the technology was going to shift. Even just with our with integrating Drush and then Composer, from version of Drupal before that was a total rewrite from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a really unknown of those future costs and what that's going to be.
Exactly.
But comparing Drupal to WordPress though, I mean, isn't that also kind of comparing apples to oranges?
Oh yeah.
I mean, because there used to be a saying that you can build a website with WordPress, you can build a WordPress with Drupal.
Right.
Because Drupal, I hardly classify Drupal as a CMS anymore. It's more of a platform upon which a developer builds a CMS.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, again, same, right? AEM also same, right? They build Adobe Experience Manager by leveraging all of the open source platforms, right? The Sling and OSGA concepts and JCR. All these are open source, but they put all these together and they build a platform of CQ and Commute. It was a kind of Switzerland company, and Adobe brought that, right? And they made it as Adobe Experience Manager. But yeah, so
It's built Java.
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we'll move forward. So yeah, I mean, overall, right? So today, I'll explore, right? How I'll try to provide comprehensive and balanced understanding of these 4 major CMS platforms, right? How this Drupal, WordPress, Craft, CMS, and AEM, right? Basically, we'll explore each system, right? How it approaches content modeling and how they do the scalability and security, right? How we can do the extensibility of it, right? So what kind of the developer support or library supports we have available, right? So again, right? So ultimately, the objective is not to crown a universal winner, right? Who is going to win, right? So it's basically I mean, each CMS needs basically this the CMS needs greatly varied by organizational goals, right? Again, it's all depends on what kind of technical team they have and where exactly they are heading, right? I mean, what kind of site they are building. So whether it's a kind of secure platform or regulator industry, right? So how which platform can be best suited for them. So we'll try to explore in those areas. So yeah, I mean, when I say the content modeling, right? So the content modeling refers to the way CMS structures the information, right? How it defines the relationship and how it supports the reuse of the content across the multiple channels, right? So when it comes to the Drupal, right? Drupal takes highly structured approach, it uses the entities, fields and relationships, right? And making it's particularly strong for complex organizational needs, right? So when you are dealing with any government agencies or healthcare industry or finance industry, right? I mean, again, if you have kind of complex content, you want to serve it for multi-channels, right? Mobile, web, and everything, right? So it basically stores in a very structured way. So when you store the content in the structured way, right? So you can retrieve it, faster, by querying it, and you can expose it as a JSON, right? It can be consumed by all of the other parts as well. Now, when it comes to the WordPress, right? Again, WordPress mostly relies on the posts and pages, but it uses the plugins for the content modeling. So I mean, since the WordPress has so much of plugin ecosystem, right? So it creates inconsistency in when you have the complex setup. So that's the problem. And when it comes to the craft CMS, right? So again, the craft CMS is so flexible and it's a developer-friendly system. But again, it requires so much of custom development right now because the ecosystem is so small. We don't have much developers or much communities available in that area. So AEM, right? It's altogether a different ballgame. AEM itself is designed for enterprise, enterprise level great content management system. So it is well suited for you have a organization where you want to do kind of analytics and where you want to do targeting activities and you want to do the personalization, right? So Adobe has suite of products they call Adobe Cloud. So you can integrate Adobe Experience Manager with all these little products, right? What we call dynamic media, right? To store the digital assets and you can integrate Adobe with the target and you can integrate Adobe with all of the things. But again, right, so you need to pay a lot for licensing and maintenance, right? So the way Adobe Experience Manager stores the content, right, in the JCR. So JCR is kind of Java content repository. So everything is a kind of node and properties. So yeah, I mean again it uses the using basic search to retrieve the content and everything. So overall, right, Drupal also stores the content in structured way. So, but again, right, it basically has the relationships and everything in place. But when it comes to the WordPress, right, it mostly depends on the plugins ecosystem, right? So, but based on that, we'll have kind of inconsistencies here. So when it comes to the AEM basically stores in the JCR way, so as a node and properties. So you can implement the queries and you can retrieve the content. You can expose it as an API to be able to serve it to other third parties and to the mobiles and across the apps and across the board. So yeah.
What about I know you only can fit somebody to play with different platforms in stock,
right?
But what about other ones the other major players like Wix and Squarespace,
right?
Because those are taking huge amounts of market share.
Exactly. Yeah, agreed. But yeah, I want to focus on these platforms, right? So I want to focus on why you are paying for one, right? How which platform, so basically, I want to compare WordPress. Right? WordPress is something that it is very easy to learn, right? You can use it, right? When it comes to Wix and all other platforms, right? So you still pay for it, but underlying, right? So how I can frame that?
Well, I mean, WordPress, the software itself is free, well, then you run into the plugins where it's this this developer charges X amount of money for this.
Exactly. Yeah.
This one's a license where you got to pay every month for that.
Right.
Which is not something that you generally find in Drupal.
Right.
Versus Wix where they have a monthly subscription that you're paying for.
But everything but Drupal is kind of like that, right? I mean, Craft is like that.
I'm not.
And WordPress is like that, and AEM is all commercial, right?
Oh, AEM is a lot. It's a basically kind of vendor-driven approach. Right? I mean, still, right? When it comes to the Drupal WordPress, right? You have a kind of community, right? You can get, you can develop the plugins and you can dedicate it and you can commercialize it, right? But when it comes to the AEM, it's all for it's basically they have so much of marketing team. They only target for lot bigger clients, right? Top 10 or top 50 bigger clients, like whatever in the market, maybe T-Mobile or ATT or United Health Group and something like that. So they charge enormous amount of money for these subscriptions and licenses.
Is there even a third-party ecosystem for AEM, or is it all Adobe?
I mean, the beauty of AEM, right? So you can integrate it with any of your front-end ecosystem. It is so flexible that, right, I mean, if you want to use the plain JavaScript, right, you can do that. If you want to use the React, and if you want to use the Angular, right, anything you can integrate with that. And, the core platform itself is built on, like, the backend is Java, OSG, right? But, you can integrate with Spring, right, Since each organization can customize based on their needs. If it is like retail platform, right? So some people, AEM, they explicitly use for like storing just digital assets, right? Some people can use it for just to like, store the content and expose it as a like, headless platform. Some people use it for like, just like full-fledged website ecosystem, right? Like they'll store the content in the back end and like expose that as a like, HTML for the front end, right? They can render it. So yeah, I mean, it has so much of customization, but still everything is kind of chargeable. Pay, yeah.
You chose these four because these are your area. You've been around these.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I had like
cool.
experience on this.
Yeah.
So, and also, I feel like these are the systems like little familiar for some most of the people. And WordPress is something that like it has 50% above market share, right? So yeah.
Typo 3 would have gone in here if we were in Germany, because Typo 3 is very much in this.
Oh, is it? Okay, I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
They're the preferred open source model for German government and so forth.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah.
I think Wix and similar vendors to Wix, they will take a lot of WordPress market share.
Oh, yeah.
What will?
Wix.
Oh, Wix.
Yeah, all those
Wix.
Squarespace.
easy
I'm
to
sure they
use,
are, yeah.
SaaS models.
Right.
There's a lot that people do with WordPress that will probably migrate over to those.
Oh, is it kind of subscription model or?
Yeah, you can make.
But still, they're all growing still.
Yeah.
There wasn't a shift down necessarily.
But
Now, I have
There's
seen,
such a
I have seen some large enterprises
Mhm.
looking into Wix and Webflow and some other vendors like that.
I guess for like marketing courses.
For static sites, things they don't touch that much, not
Yeah.
complex.
yeah, it is an impression that the Wix is something that, right, as a business owner, right, you can just purchase it and you can build a website like drag and drag component, right? So, but yeah, I mean, like WordPress or AEM or like these systems, right, you can customize a lot, right? You can extend the component, right? You can override it, overlay it, and you can develop it according to your business needs, kind of thing. So that's the kind of fundamental difference I feel.
Well, I think that's one of the things that Drupal we've gotten wrong.
Yeah.
In that we've moved away from, developing for simplicity,
Yeah.
versus we've kind of made Drupal more and more complex and more dependent on third-party technologies. Actually, the whole class on this last year, where I think we're kind of jumping the shark in that regard, that we're losing, we're losing market share to people, to guy who owns a sandwich shop who just wants to have a website, and he doesn't want to have to learn, Rush and Composer and Symphony and and he doesn't want to have to learn all that stuff. And I think that what we've done we collectively, in making Drupal more and more complex, we've kind of painted ourselves into a corner, and I mean, for lack of a better term, it's kind of masturbatory at this point. That we're just doing more complex things
Right.
just because we can, but is that really the right way for us to go? Which I know that's kind of going outside the scope.
No, I agree. I mean, again, right, so that's exactly right, I mean, so these CMS systems, right, business has their unique needs, right, they will come up with their own things. So that's the reason why, we had to customize this out of the box thing. So that's where, things get so much of complex, right, we cannot maintain in the long run, so, yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. We are discussing about, right, customizations and flexibility, right? So you touched the exact point, right? So yeah, Drupal offers like lot of out of the box customization and like supports the complex data, but again, right, it basically, right, we are not relying on so much of third-party plugins, but still, if you do so much of customizations, right, again, it's very hard, right, when we are doing, updating it, and like, we are doing the re-platforming of it. So yeah, and same true for WordPress as well. But again, right, this plugin ecosystem will create so much of conflicts and inconsistent quality. And when it comes to the craft, right, so basically, right, it is designed by developers and it offers so much of control. But again, right, you need to have a dedicated technical team to manage all those things. So the same true for whatever we stated for the Drupal. So AEM will give you so much of flexibility, right? So as I said, right, if you want to serve the multi-channel content, right, so you can create a content in one place and you can expose that content as a JSON to like app, mobile, and like omni-channel and all those stuff, right? So for that one, right, you can keep on adding or like your front-end layers to it, like some teams might use Angular, React, Vue.js, like whatever. So basically, this is how like business folks think, right? Whatever they saw in the marketing campaigns, right? Hey, this technology is shining, right? Hey, nowadays AI is shining. Why cannot we use the AEM or Drupal, right? How we can leverage the AI? So they come up with their business goals and requirements. So we keep on add to these systems, but that's true. When you add so much of complexity to it, so it's really hard to maintain in the future. But since AEM is kind of vendor driven, so they have since they are expecting so much of premium money, right? So they will get some support from them. Again, it costs a lot of money. But when it comes to Drupal, right? So again, we need to struggle and we need to get some help from the community and how we can make this as a simpler, like as a community team, right? Since it's kind of open source, yeah. So maybe I can ask you, right? Since you did so much of work on the WordPress, right? So is that true, or like how do you think about that, right? When we are talking about a lot of flexibility and customizations, right?
There's definitely a lot of flexibility. With the plugin conflicts, there's a recent push
Right.
with the Abilities API to standardize saying what plugins do, so that way a lot of AI agents can actually understand, and also developers and plugin developers can also have a standardized way of saying this is what this plugin does, this is how it works, and then it reduces a lot of conflicts. But it definitely has been an issue in the past with
That's good. Yeah, that's
huge
good.
plugin ecosystem.
Are the plugin inconsistencies due to I guess a lack of or less restrictive coding standards?
It depends on where it's accessibility, really. So anybody can make their own plugins.
Right.
Not anybody can deploy their plugins to the WordPress org repository. And then there's also plugins that you have to pay for. There's open source, so it's just super accessible to like not limit anybody from really creating what they want to create with WordPress. But outside of that, that's kind of the thing.
But if they are going to be published, because I've definitely heard that that's definitely been an issue, and I always kind of guessed it. Why? I figured it just because they don't really.
It's just accessible.
They're not as strict about coding standards as we are in the Drupal community. If you use a tab instead of a space, You know, like that's a major problem here.
Yeah.
You know, you'll get yelled at in the comments for forever.
That's why if you want to publish to an official repository, they have their own coding standards, especially if it's WordPress.org. But it doesn't limit you from just spinning it up on your own machine and making your own plugin to do.
Well, yeah, you can do that with the Drupal plugin too, but
Yeah.
But yeah, at least good that now they are streamlining it right now. They are using the AI to do this streamlining. That's good news. Yeah. Yeah. Now we'll talk about scalability, right? So if you want to scale your business, right, maybe across the regions level or what, right? So again, right, when I say the scalability, right, it's not just about handling high traffic, right? So it means that how well a CMS supports, right, increasing the content volume, right? Growing content teams or editorial teams are the multi-sites operations, right? And how this integration with external teams. So I mean, again, right, Drupal architecture is proven to be kind of high scale environment, because this is being used by kind of government portals and global enterprises, and offers robust caching layers and multi-site capabilities, right? So again, right, WordPress also scales efficiently, but it typically requires that you should have fine-tuned hardware to it. So you need to have a good CPU and hardware to able to scale it, right? So yeah, when it comes to the craft CMS, right, it basically performs well for mid-sized deployments, but may require custom engineering for large enterprise scenarios. So again, right, when we talk about the AEM, right, so AEM itself is built for large enterprise ecosystem. So when you tie AEM with AEM cloud, right, so when there is a huge traffic, right, you can automatically spin up large pods to accommodate that, and you can scale the AEM for across the regions, and you can go the global in a minute, right? Again, each has their unique capabilities for scaling. So yeah, this is all about how each platform can offer the scalability consideration. So any questions on this one? Yeah, I hope not. Continuing that. So yeah, now I'll talk about the performance, right? So when I say the performance, right, the performance is a combination of the core CMS design, and how that particular CMS is using the doing the caching, right? What kind of hosting quality or strategy we are doing, and what kind of front-end integration implementation we are doing, right? So again, I'm just focusing on this 4 core systems. So I'm talking about how each system does, right? So yeah, when we talk about Drupal, right? Drupal has the built-in caching mechanism, right? It can easily integrate with systems like Redis and Varnish. When it comes to the WordPress, right? WordPress performance varies widely, depending upon the plugins and what kind of hosting mechanism we are using. And yeah, when it comes to the craft, so the craft content management system offers the strong performance. Basically, it's due to lightweight architecture, but again, it requires developers to design efficient templates, and we need to have good queries to be able to retrieve the content. And yeah, when you talk about Adobe Experience Manager, right, again, it provides so much of advanced performance features, it has dispatcher layer and the web server on front of it, right? It distributes the load across multiple servers, and it has Fastly and Akamai cache layer built on top of that, right? So yeah, you expect to have high performance with the AEM, with the other things as well. But when you explicitly talk about, right, AEM, right, because you guys are not much familiar with AEM, so that's why I'm little bit giving, extra information on that. But it's again depends on, right, what kind of front end layer you are using, for your CMS, right? So if you use, any kind of plain JavaScript and HTML and CSS, and you need to make sure that, right, follow the best practices, right? How we are getting the content from the back end to front end, whether the API is giving the response in the faster time or not, and and are we caching the static content or not? If we are caching, what is the how frequently we are invalidating and all those stuff, right? So yeah, I mean, each has its unique flexibilities on that, but yeah, so again, it's ultimately, right, overall it all depends on, right, the base of the content management system, and what kind of hosting platforms we are using, whether it's a cloud or on-prem or hybrid system, and right, and also the front end layer of it. So yeah, now I'll talk about the security posture. So yeah, I mean, so basically, right, security is a critical factor in selecting the content management system. Especially if you are dealing with organizations in the regulated industries, like a healthcare, like a finance, or government, right? So if you are very cautious about, right, this regulated industries, right? Drupal has a dedicated security team and strong access control permissions, and it's widely trusted by the government agencies worldwide, right? So it is proven to be a good solution for when you are dealing with these kind of organizations. So again, right, as I said, like WordPress core is so secure, but this plugin ecosystem, right, it exposes for vulnerability. So you need to be very cautious about, right, what kind of plugins you are choosing, right? I mean, how frequently you are doing the upgrades and updates, and right, all this stuff. And Craft CMS also maintains a good security record, but has a very smaller community, meaning fewer eyes on the code. It's very slower to caught the bugs and resolve it, right? When it comes to the Adobe Experience Manager, Adobe Experience Manager provides enterprise-grade security features, though complexity, right? Because you can able to integrate with so much of third-party systems and plugins and libraries, right? It can create its own risk, right? If you cannot manage it properly. So security evaluation, right? Must be balanced, right? Basically, it's not something that, right, hey, this platform has good security, right, I can use that. It's not something that, right, it's not always the CMS responsibility. It's something that as an organization, you need to make sure that, right, keep on regularly check for the updates, and whether you have any deprecated APIs, or whether you are not introducing any new libraries which might prone to be risk, right? So you need to consider all those things. So ultimately, right, if you are dealing with any government or regulated industries, Drupal, right, it's going to be a good fit. And if you don't want to spend so much of money on it, right? But if your organization wants to, have good budgets, and and also you want to have good regulatory standards, then AEM is going to be a good fit in your scenario. So yeah, now I'll talk about the community support, right? So again, right, so since the strength of a CMS community, right, it directly affects the long-term, right, sustainability and availability of libraries and plugins, right, and right, what kind of documentation quality we have, and right, and again, ultimately, right, the ease of finding the developers, so that's the key. So when you basically, as an organization, you choose the decision to, got this, purchase this CMS, right? But if you don't have the, long-term sustainability, or if you don't have available libraries, or if you don't have the skilled developer ecosystem, right? If you cannot find the developers, right, it's really hard for to maintain in the long run, right? So that's what we are discussing from the beginning onwards. Right? Hey, Drupal, since it has so much of ecosystem, you can customize a lot, right? You cannot basically scale it up, re-platform it, right? So that's the key consideration you have to do. And yeah, so Drupal has large and globally distributed open source community, and it contributes to thousands of modules and continuous improvements, right? When it comes to the WordPress also, it's enormous, right? It supports rapid plugin development and widespread lending resources, right? Through varying plugin quality can be a challenge. But I'm glad that we found some solution through AI, right? We can streamline the plugin process as well. So if we talk about the craft CMS, it's also has a smaller community, but it's a very dedicated developer community though. So again, right, those will produce the polished tools, but fewer choices than when it compares to Drupal or WordPress. So Adobe Experience Manager, right? So Adobe Experience Manager also has good documentation quality, since it's basically designed for enterprises, right? So and also it's vendor driven, right? They have this subscription model. So when in an issue occur, right? They have their support team available for resourcing, resolving the issues, or driving the strategic way, or at least at least somebody there to blame, right? So that's what I can say. Yeah. So now we'll talk about, right, hey, we talked about, right, all the CMS, right? So when, Drupal excels, right, when we need to consider the Drupal. So, Drupal stands out in a scenarios, right, when involving complex content structures, or the multi-channel delivery, or large content or editorial teams, or strict governance requirement, right? It particularly strong for organization managing multi-websites on a shared architecture, or this needing the structured and reusable content, right? So Drupal is very good at these things, but again, right? So you need to be very cautious about, right, doing so much of customizations of it. So this will create so much of bottlenecks when you are migrating or upgrading it. So yeah, so that's the one key area to consider. So yeah, I'll go to the next slide. So now, right, again, right, since this is the Drupal camp event, right? So we are comparing Drupal against the other system, right? So now, if it is Drupal is not a choice, right, then we need to consider the other CMSs. So WordPress is, again, right, Drupal is so powerful for when it comes to other CMS, right? If you have simpler CMS options can be more suitable for depending on the organization goals and budget and team size. And WordPress is ideal for the smaller teams seeking rapid development, and if you want to get the developers, right, it's pretty easy to get, and it's a kind of very less learning curve for them. And yeah, again, right, you will get a lot of help from the plugins, right? And when it comes to the craft CMS, right, craft CMS is suits for organizations that want modern and developer friendly content management system with elegant workflows, but right, without enterprise overhead of AEM, right? So AEM is something that, right, you need to pay so much of money for your subscriptions, premiums, and all this, the cloud ecosystem. Yeah, so the goal of this section, right? So there is no one size fits for all. It's basically, all it comes down to, right, what exactly we are trying to achieve, how much budget we have, and what kind of developer team we already have in the system, and how we want to scale it in the future, right? And where exactly we are striving, right, from now to next to 5 years or 10 years. So you need to consider all these aspects. Again, right, I think I just want to keep this slide here, so whoever don't know, right, I mean, all this Drupal, WordPress, and Craft CMS, right, share PHP as their backend, right? The front ends are different. When it comes to AEM, right, AEM basically relies on Java and OSGA framework, and it uses the cloud. And when it comes to the front end, right, AEM can be customizable to use any front end system you would like, right? Like whether it's a headless, you can directly use your JavaScript, Angular, or anything such. And Drupal also use the front end like Symfony, and Craft uses the E, and so WordPress, right, you can have the plugins to make it work for some of your system. So I want to put this slide, right, if anybody, hey, I'm in the WordPress, right, hey, I want to switch my career to AEM, right, what I have to learn. So if you want to switch your career to AEM, you need to learn your backend as a Java, OSGA, and how you can develop the component with HTML and cyclic templating language and all. So if you want to switch it to Drupal, right, hey, since you already know the backend as a PHP, right, so you need to learn the Symfony and all the stuff. So yeah, that's why I put this.
Craft will be on Laravel this year.
Oh, is it?
Craft is cutting its bottom out and putting Laravel in there. Is that amazing or what?
I have to see it.
WordPress is actually going React now too for its front end.
Oh wow, that's good. That's good. At least, right, now it's going to be good for developers as well, so they'll get opportunity to learn the new front-end technology, right? Yeah, so that's awesome. So yeah, again, right, I don't want to talk about these things. You guys are already aware of it, right? So I just want to put it out there, right? So, the WordPress has so much of market share because, right, it's very easy to adapt and, it's easy to learn and use it, like 60% of market share. Drupal's only shares, again, these numbers are not that accurate to, just to, for reference I keep it, right? So Drupal only shares like 1 or 2%, but again, it dominates high traffic, government, and all these regulated industries websites. And the Craft, right, it's basically favored by the brand, brands prioritizing custom and structure. And Adobe Experience Manager, right, as I said, it is being used by top 500 MNCs, right? So whoever wants to have strict, regulatory framework, and if they want to have, somebody is there to monitor and all those stuff, right? But again, you have to pay so much of money to, use their systems. So yeah, whole, right, I spoke, so much of it, right? So now, what exactly I want to, give, overall summary of it, right? So basically, right, when we talk about each system, right, like Drupal offers unmatched flexibility and scalability for complex content ecosystem, right? Like WordPress so good at it, right? When you have simplicity, or when you want to do the rapid development for smaller project. Like when we talk about the Craft CMS, right, it is refined and customizable experience for developer-led teams. When we talk about the AEM, so it basically delivers enterprise level power, and it integration capabilities at you need to pay so much of money for to use the Adobe Experience Manager. So yeah, again, right. So I want to conclude this session by saying that there is no universally perfect content management system, right? So each platform serves different needs based on the complexity, budget, and scalability requirements, right? And yeah, I want what I want to tell is that so by deciding which CMS good for your needs, right? You need to always think for how much budget you have, right? what kind of industry you're dealing with, whether it's a regulated industry, right? What kind of security landscape you need to deal in the future, right? And what kind of future looks like from now to 10 years. You want to scale it, right? Across the board, or so, and what kind of developers are available in the market, and whether we have good plugin community and extensibility, and libraries are available or not. So you need to think all these things before choosing, before going one versus another, right? So that's the key here. So yeah, I think that's all for today. Now, yeah, I'm open for any questions. So yeah, I think
Another thing there is, should you use a CMS?
that's a good question though. I don't see a reason why not you can use the CMS, because right, when we are using the AI, right, AI can hallucinate a lot, right? You don't see any trusted information if you don't use the CMS, right? The CMS is something that as an enterprise, as a regulated industry, I govern the content and I publish it, right? To let the others know that they know this is the trusted information. So for sure you would require the CMS in the future as well, in the AI era.
Well, if you're publishing information, then any of the flat file choices will work, and they're easier to contribute to. So DDEP.com is built on Astro, and I'm so happy with it compared to, it used to be WordPress, it could have been Drupal, but people can contribute with a PR, and we can contribute with a PR, we can review it as a PR. It doesn't require any privileges or any maintenance or any database. Completely flat file, but of course it's a very limited purpose.
Exactly.
It's just publishing information, and that's all.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any other things. So
I mean, yeah, I can give you my personal experience as well, right? So I am working for a company called United Health Group, Optum, right? So I mean, so we are having so much of bottlenecks with the the performance, right? So when we went for Adobe, right? How we can fine tune to for the performance, right? They came up with, they have the concept called edge delivery, right? So, but again, it's also safe, right? You can give your content as a kind of flag files or kind of Excel, right? But again, it's a very limited purpose, right? You cannot have the governance, or you cannot have so much of. Thank you. So you cannot customize a lot. So that's the problem. So each has its different needs, right? So you need to make sure which purpose you are using which CMS. So any more questions?
we'll shut up now.
No, please. I mean, again, right? It's not something that I am talking. I am also learning while talking, right? So that's good. I mean, because you guys are in the industry, right? You have so much to contribute and give information to me as well, right?
One thing, just maybe a comment, not as much as like a question. When you compare Adobe with Drupal, it's not really a fair fight, right?
Oh yeah, again, right? That's what I tell you. It's not about universal winner or anything.
Yeah.
Again, right? As a organization, right? Hey, why I should pay for AEM, right? With a premium. Why can't I use the Drupal, right?
Right.
It's a.
But then you mentioned the security that they have. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I compete a lot with Adobe.
Right.
But then I'm competing against Acquia, and I use Drupal, right? Because then I can offer the other stuff that I can't get with Drupal by itself.
Oh yeah.
Security, we have FedRAMP compliance, we have support, we have professional services, we have CAM, we have a whole bunch of stuff that Adobe packages in one.
Right.
And then when you compare that whole package with Drupal, then
I agree. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, yeah, I agree. Yep.
and it's not just Acquia, you can get other hosting providers.
Oh yeah.
With Drupal, then you have a complete package.
True. Fair. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so that's what, right? I mean, when I was thinking, right? Hey, how I can conclude, right? How I can give this information, right? I know, if somebody are thinking, right, if somebody are in the deciding phase, right, which CMS can be good fit, right, how they can assess it, right? So that's what, my thought process, Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you so much for